Good afternoon, everybody. Well, the Conservative government has been questioning the Liberal government on their climate change plans, their price on pollution, quote unquote, et cetera, et cetera. And here's an exchange between Pierre Poilievre and Mr. Trudeau with regards to small businesses and will they be exempt from the plan. And this is just an exchange that I think is interesting enough to highlight.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Actually, what his own government documents state is that so-called target is a 90% exemption for large industrial emitters. We've simply asked if small businesses will get the same exemption. We have had no answer. And in light of that, he still thinks that Canadian taxpayers should believe that if he puts his hands in their left pocket, he'll give some of it back in their right pocket. Mr. Speaker, his own documents admit the government will collect more in taxes than it gives out in rebates. Isn't that proof that this is just another Liberal tax grab?
Yes. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, that's simply not true. We are ensuring that we are returning all the money collected from the price on pollution to the jurisdiction in which it was collected. That is a commitment we have made in law. Of course, a law the Conservatives voted against, a law the Conservatives continue to scoff at because they have no approach to fight climate change. They do not think it matters to fight climate change. We'll tell that to folks in BC suffering through forest fires every summer. Tell that to folks in Saskatchewan dealing with floods. Tell that to the droughts people are facing in Manitoba. Tell that to the folks across the country who know that climate change is real.
And not everybody claps for a whole bunch of time. So a couple of things I want to talk about there. Number one, I think it's interesting. I don't think question period fills the question answering void anymore. I think question period should be replaced by two politicians, and whether it's the immigration minister and the shadow minister, or the prime minister and the leader of the opposition or whatever, them sitting across maybe the center table and then having the speaker there to moderate the talk, and put that out as a podcast. Put that out as question period, because I want to pick people's brains. I don't want to have what Trudeau's doing is showboating right there. He's basically just picking a talking point, a political line, anything that can be printed, right? Anything that sounds good, soundbite, whatever, so that the news can print it. And I mean, he had a smirk on his face. He knows what he's peddling is garbage. But that's his job. His role is to just put out a soundbite that can get reported. And, they're playing roles here. Mr. Scheer is supposed to ask a question that evokes the Conservatives to go, yeah, right. And then Trudeau's supposed to parry with a political, talking point or whatever. This is well established, and everybody kind of knows that nobody's going to answer questions here unless they've got an agenda, right? Like everybody knew what the outcome of Max's position would be before it happened, because I mean, the House is stacked the way it's stacked, right? Basically, what Trudeau says goes, and everybody here knows it because that's our system. That's how this works, especially in here. But what I'm saying is, I think we have the technology to evolve. And I think it would be interesting and worthwhile to hear what our leaders actually think. And okay, Mr. Trudeau, you say let's put a price on pollution, but there's clear problems with the IPCC data set that is the HADCRET data or the HADCRET 4 data is wrong, right? Or not wrong. At best, it's massaged in a way that favors you can look at my video on that, but that's a whole can of worms. What I'm saying is I want to open that can of worms on live, and I want the politicians to not be able to wiggle out of publishing it. I want to see how far down those talking points go, Mr. Trudeau, because I think it's one level. You're a bungalow, sir. But I don't know, right? Like, I've never sat down and chatted with him. I don't know that I'd be able to get through it, to be honest. Just because I would get up and leave because I wouldn't be able to deal with it. But that's neither here nor there. I want to hear in depth what every single one of these people on both sides of the aisle thinks about specific issues, because that's important. These people leading us is important. And yes, each one of these people has been elected by people within their ridings and their constituencies, and that's wonderful. If I could access, or if the public generally could access conversations and such with each of them in their constituencies, that would be even better, right? But that's not how our politics is going right now. And I think we have the potential for it to go that way. But anyway, I'm getting off track. My point here is Trudeau's trying to push on this price for pollution And the pollution that they're focusing on is beset with problems. But there is pollution that's in Canada that's pretty rampant in Canada, actually, and they're ignoring it pretty much. So sewage and wastewater pollution, domestic household, causes of water pollution. Domestic households, industrial and agricultural practices produce wastewater that can cause pollution of many lakes and rivers. Sewage is a term used for wastewater that often contains feces, urine, and laundry waste. There are 3 billion people on Earth, so treating sewage is a big priority. Sewage disposal is a major problem in developing countries, as many people in these areas don't have access to sanitary conditions or clean water. Untreated sewage water in such areas can contaminate the environment and cause diseases such as diarrhea. This is well known and documented, by the way. Sewage in developed countries is carried away from the home quickly and hygienically through sewage pipes. Sewage is treated in water treatment plants, and the waste is often disposed into the sea. The sewage is mainly biodegradable, and most of it is broken down in the environment. In developed countries, sewage often causes problems when people flush chemical and pharmaceutical substances down the toilet. When people are ill, sewage often carries harmful viruses, blah, 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 blah. But this is clear. Sewage, wastewater, municipal wastewater is a pollutant. Is a type of wastewater that is produced by a community of people. It is characterized by volume or rate of flow, the physical condition, chemical and toxic constituents, and its bacteriological status, whether organisms it contains and in what quantities. And it mostly consists of gray water from sinks, tubs, showers, dishwashers, and clothes, black water used to flush toilets, and human waste, soaps and detergents, toilet paper, and etc. So sewage usually travels from buildings, a building's plumbing into a sewer, which carries it elsewhere to a sewage facility, whether it's combined with runoff, etc. A lot of times the storm systems are combined with the wastewater. So, of course, these tabs are... So this article was written in 2006, updated in 2013, but it's still true today. So, quote, Canada's dumping raw sewage into its waterways. And this is talking specifically about BC, but... quote, Victoria's churning river of effluent doesn't look as awful as you think, considering the unholy repudiation that precedes it. And it's talking about the, well, I'll continue. It's past breakfast time, and Jim McFarland, blah, 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 shows off the end result as the surge hits the Clover Point pumping station on Vancouver Island's south coast. It's possible, watching the volume of flow through the station, to chart the rhythm of the BC capital. The 7:30 a.m. swell of morning ablution, and breakfast cleanup, another peak 5 to 6 p.m. for the supper hour. In the throes of a hot broadcast event, the time of TV commercials can be charted by the flood of waste going through the giant pumps and the kilometer-long ocean outfall pipes here and at nearby Macaulay Point. So it goes unchecked, just right out into the ocean, unchecked. And it's not like that's stopping knowing when we know about it. In Montreal, this is a yearly event. Canada's new government. So in 2015, the election was held on October 19th. And the Harper government had stopped the dumping of raw sewage into the St. Lawrence by Montreal. They said, no, you can't do that. And they didn't come up with a solution because they didn't share their solution, I suppose, because the election was going to happen. But they blocked them until... they couldn't block them anymore, but until they lost the election and they were irrelevant. But it says, here's October 6, 2015, St. Lawrence raw sewage dump. Montreal mayor gives Environment Canada 3 days to meet. And he was saying that it's imperative. It says, federal leaders weigh in. Montreal's controversial plan to dump 8 billion liters of wastewater into the St. Lawrence River has become a hot political issue playing into the federal election campaign today. The city is set to release the raw sewage from 26 sewer mains along the Montreal shoreline for 1 week beginning October 18th, pending Environment Canada approval. Montreal faces an impossible choice. Quote, obviously, this is a question that's worrying people, Trudeau said, adding that a Liberal government would be a better partner with cities investing $20 billion in green infrastructure programs, including water treatment. That investment, he said, would help cities such as Montreal, quote, not have to make impossible choices like the one it's faced with right now. Montreal said it has no option but to dump the raw sewage for a week in order to move a snow dump that empties into a major sewage interceptor beneath the expressway, the raised highway that is close to the downtown. Doesn't matter. But the funny thing is, hold on a second. Here it is. Here's the environment minister talking about allowing Montreal to dump raw sewage into the St. Lawrence River.
While I recognize that this release of untreated wastewater is far from ideal, and it is a situation I inherited as minister, it is needed to allow the City of Montreal to perform critical maintenance on their infrastructure before winter.
Infrastructure
just not ready, right? So she said, I inherited this. However, here in the same news broadcast, less than a minute
there's
later,
less political.
Sorry.
It's getting hard to see something.
And there's less political sniping now that the Harper government, which had suspended Montreal's plan, is gone. Quebec's premier agrees.
So there's less political sniping now that the person who said Montreal can't do that is gone. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot less political sniping after the person who told Montreal they couldn't do that is gone. Good thing there's no political sniping now that we've got rid of that guy. Now let's turn on the sewage pipes and dump it into the St. Lawrence. Yay! And it's not just East and West Coast. December 4th, 2017, Ontario NDP published NPP gates to Kathleen Wynne. The Niagara River is not a sewer. So there's widespread dumping, so say our MPPs. And here's another one from the Ottawa Post. It's not the Ottawa Post, but it's the Ottawa River Keeper. Gatineau to release 20 million liters of untreated sewage into the Lievre River. And it says, our director of operations in Quebec met the mayor of Gatineau and his infrastructure service team this morning to discuss a planned sewage release in the east end of the city. The release of untreated sewage will begin on Monday and may last until Wednesday. The release site is just upstream from where the Lievre flows into the Ottawa River. The city of Gatineau is releasing untreated sewage into the Lievre River while they do much-needed maintenance work on one of the plumbing station, where corrosion is so advanced that the potential for pipe burst is significant. So this is going to happen one way or the other. And between October 24th and 26th, every time people in Burbank or wherever flush their toilets and wash their dishes or laundry, their polluted water will go straight into the river without any filtration or treatment. The city estimates they will release about 8 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of raw sewage into the river. So here is the last thing I will talk about before going back to question period and hearing Trudeau one more time. Fast forward to 2018, and this is a CTV article. Dumping raw sewage into rivers and lakes is common throughout Canada. And it says, it says Toronto, like the vast majority of Canadian cities, doesn't monitor real-time data of sewage leaks into lakes, rivers, or oceans. As a result, it's unknown how much raw sewage flowed through overflow pipes when the storm overwhelmed the city's treatment facilities. Data provided by the federal government shows in 2017, municipalities reported 215 billion liters of raw sewage were spilled or leaked without being treated, enough to fill 86,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That represents an increase of 10% over the amount reported 5 years ago. Over the last 5 years, the total amount is in excess of 1 trillion liters. About 2/3 of the amount of reported in 2017 was purposely released when rains overwhelmed water systems that use a single pipe for both storm sewers and wastewater. When storms happen, the excess water can't be handled by the treatment plants and must be released into waterways to prevent basement backups. So, that's good. The largest contributor to national problems in British Columbia, where municipalities reported 77 billion liters of raw sewage that leaked or was spilled in 2017, followed by Nova Scotia at 39 million liters, Newfoundland at 29 million, and Ontario at 22.8 million liters. Those numbers are nowhere near the actual amounts being leaked, said Tully. Data obtained from Environment Canada said in 2016, only 159 of the 269 municipal water systems that are required to report sewage leaks actually did so. The agency is supposed to investigate every missing report, but Tully said the government is more focused on providing education and technical assistance. Environment Canada also does not publicly report each spill, and very few clients do it themselves. Last year, the Ontario City of Kingston became the first city in Canada to install monitors to its pipes to measure how much sewage is being leaked. The city now reports publicly in real-time events as they happen. And there's more there, but essentially, Trudeau's talking about one kind of pollution and punishing, almost destroying an entire economy for it, while letting this other kind of pollution just run rampant for no good reason at all. So that seems really, really strange. Okay, and I'll finish off. This is Pierre Poliver again with a question. Well, it's a statement. These are statements. This is statement period. This isn't really question period. So let's change question period to sit down with a podcast and chat period, because this is just statement period. There is value in it, but not nearly as much as I hoped for. Anyway, I'll let him ask the question and then show you Trudeau's response. And it's silly. It's ridiculous. And I shake my head every time. Every time he opens his mouth, it's horrible.
Talking about the billions he's going to spend, which is precisely what we predicted. They are collecting this tax so that they can spend it how they choose. In fact, just in Ontario alone, they admit they will collect $1.4 billion more in taxes than they will give out in rebates to individuals and families. That money, that difference, is the net tax grab on Canadians, especially suburban commuters, soccer moms, and average ordinary families. Isn't that yet more proof that this is just another Liberal tax grab?
The right honourable Prime Minister.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to channel my former profession of a teacher when I point out that if the member opposite spent as much time trying to worm around and confuse everyone with our plan and spent it more on developing his own plan to fight climate change, we'd all be better off and he would have something more intelligent to say. Mr. Speaker, we are fighting climate change and we're doing it in a real way, on real terms, because that's what Canadians expect.
And yeah, but the BC carbon tax did not reduce emissions. The sending billions of dollars to California does not reduce emissions. Have a look at my video on climate change if you're interested in my position on what this tax will do. But no amount of money is going to convince the world to stop emissions. And the pollution, he has no interest in reducing pollution. He doesn't care. He ordered his environment minister to allow Montreal to discharge their wastewater, despite the fact that the Harper government had already said no, despite the fact that, I don't know, but if the Harper government said no, perhaps they had a plan. Maybe they were going to send money to help with infrastructure. Maybe they had a plan. Maybe they didn't. But at this point in time, the trust level with this government is at an all-time low, and I dislike Justin Trudeau personally quite a lot. Thanks for watching. Check out peoplespartyofcanada.ca if you want to have an election stolen from you in 2019. The sad state of Canadian democracy. Thanks for watching.